A very warm welcome to the 20th episode of the podcast of the World Wind Energy Association, The World of Wind Power. My name is Stefan Gsänger. I'm Secretary General of the association, and it's my pleasure that today we have a guest from a very promising market on the Southern Hemisphere from Argentina. It's my pleasure to welcome Dr. Alejandro Gesino. Alejandro,
Hi,
warm welcome
Stefan.
to you.
Thank you very much. Glad to meet you again.
Alejandro, we've been knowing each other for many years. I know that you had
Yes,
several positions. You started actually for the previous Argentine Wind Energy Association. Then you
yes.
came, I remember, to Germany as a researcher. You worked for companies. Now you're back to Argentina working for the association, also for a company still. But maybe you would like to introduce yourself. How have you come to this topic of wind energy?
Well, long history. Very good question, Stefan. I started while I was a student in my university nearly 30 years ago with a very interesting project related wind energy forecast. And then I came to Germany with a colleague of mine, you know, also very well, Mariano Fayela. In 2003, we were part of an exchange program coming to ISET, nowadays Fraunhofer IEE, in Kassel. And there started the whole history of my career, uh, working as a researcher, then my PhD in the University of Kassel, then Ambrion and Tenet were part of my career. Then I went back to Argentina after 11 years in Germany, two kids born in Kassel. And nowadays I am working for the German company Enertrag and president of the Argentine Alliance for the Energy Transition, which, as you said, is the continuity of the Argentine Wind Energy Association, which was founded by Enrico Spinadel, I don't know, since 35, 40 years ago.
So you have a very kind of really background working for many, very broad background working for companies. I think you
Yeah.
mentioned two grid operators. Maybe not all of our um, uh, the audience know them. That these are two large transmission system operators, developers now. So you know the wind sector from various angles. But maybe
Yes.
talking briefly about the association. It was previously the Argentine Wind Energy Association, and you've changed the name, kind of a relaunch. What is the role of the association? Who is behind the association?
Well, there was a process. Let's say the Argentine Wind Energy Association was last year 29 years old, and with the title "Mission Accomplished," sort to say, when the association started, you know, this in the early 80s, also in Germany, in Europe, but also in South America, there were many questions. Wind turbines, yes, no. Birds, nature, energy, variable energy fluctuation of the energy, ancillary services, forecasting, many obstacles, public opinion. Nowadays, we are fortunately not discussing anymore where wind energy is yes and no. It's clear yes, it's clear one of the energies for the future, with still many things to discuss, but not the basics. The basics are accepted, and the public opinion, decision maker, politicians, let's say not 100%, but fortunately more than 70, 80% worldwide agrees on this way. So a very well-known team from the former Argentine Wind Energy Association uh, contact me, led by Laura Schumelli. You know her very well. Hector Pagani was the president after Enrico Spinadel passed away, and Jorge Gil. This is the team working with also a colleague of mine, Ezequiel Leonardi. Together, we are the commission of the Argentine Alliance for the Energy Transition. And we decided to bring this a step forward. We say the energy transition is not only wind, it's of course wind of part of the story. Personally, my career is my first love, if you say, in a way. I started in the wind area, but the energy transition is energy, gas, and transport, and you have a bright scope of technologies. You have a region, not only a country, which is one of the most richest countries in the world, regions in the world. And there is where we are going to promote, to facilitate the energy transition, to discuss, to be also clear in our messages, to be sustainable, to be cost effective, meaning not using public money without any clear direction, allowing the private sector to develop, to consume, and to produce values in the value chain for the energy transition. This is our main direction and main core.
So you're now not only focusing on wind energy, but on the future of the energy system, which I think our association has in common. We have as a goal also the shift, the global shift towards renewable energy. Now, when we look at the status of Argentina, where Argentina stands today, recently, of course, I think most people, when they hear about Argentina, they hear about your president and who, yeah, seems to do some steps to strengthen the economy. Not everybody likes that, but the energy situation in the country, I think everybody knows Argentina is really blessed with wind energy. There's very strong wind in the south. But how is at the moment the energy supply in the country?
Well, Argentina now, let's say, is still fossil heavy. There is fossil dependency. Let's say natural gas between 47-55% of total primary energy supply, and oil between 33-40%. Let's say this range reflects different year bases across the official profiles of the country. There is also bioenergy, roughly 5%, and hydro slash nuclear with low single digits. This is one thing. The electricity mix and renewables, just to give you an idea, in 2024, renewables supply roughly 16% of the electricity demand on an annual average. Below, let's say, the target, which was set for the end of 2025 of 20%. This was the first renewable energy law, the 27,191. Let's say wind energy is the largest renewable energy in Argentina, but I must say the PV sector is really developing very, very fast in the north part of the country, where the radiation is really, really interesting. The installed capacity trends, let's say solar reached 1.6 gigs by the end of 2024. Renewable energy additions in 2024 were 900 megas, and by the end of 2025, we will be roughly about 700 megas. Just for you to have an idea, we are nearly going to 1 gig per year of installed capacity. I can explain you later why is this. For context, let's say we can mention Uruguay with 99% renewable electricity in 2024, Chile reaching 70% renewables in 2024, mixing wind and PV with a 33% of this 70% from renewables. Let's say the region is growing in terms of renewable energies, and Argentina is part of this, fully devoted, the private sector doing this job, let's say.
So there is a lot happening in the region. It's good that you speak not only about Argentina, but other countries even have higher shares of renewable energy. The potential of wind power in Argentina is huge.
Yes.
Do you have an estimation what that would be technically?
Yes, let's say when you speak about the potential in Argentina, there are two things we need to say nowadays. When you see solar reaching nearly 2 gigs, and which studies are done, you can mention we are far above 100 gigs with 100 gigs PV. Then depends on the country. You need to understand that Argentina is from south to north, from Lisbon to Kiev
Yeah.
in Europe. But south to north, let's say you have huge amounts of wind, PV, biomass, also geothermal energy. The combination of them and many studies were done in the high level where people say yes, 200 gigs of wind, 180 gigs of PV. Why I mention different kind of studies? Because the country has mesoscale analysis, but from my point of view, from the mesoscale until a microscale analysis in the country, you have different results, more efficiency, better wind turbines, and solar radiation was measured in a different way. Now there are technologies analyzing the possibility of reflecting the sunlight. PV, modern PV panels may produce 15 to 20% more than what was expected years ago. So would be easier to say 150 and 100 gigs wind and PV respectively, but from my point of view, in some cases, it's more than that.
Must be.
I am pretty convinced that we are in front of a nation with 300 gigs wind and roughly 280 gigs PV. At least, if you just for you to have an idea, Germany, the whole country is similar to the Buenos Aires province only. So Germany is 390,000 square kilometers. The Buenos Aires province is 310,000 square kilometers. And you have only in Germany roughly 110, 120 gigs wind PV. So imagine that the possibilities in Argentina might reach very soon the 100 gigs if we do the right things. And the perspective of the country, from my point of view, is roughly 500 to 600 gigs wind and nearly the same in PV.
Well, that's very impressive. Now, of course, when we compare that with Germany, of course, is a highly industrialized country, and there's many industries which need that. It's densely populated compared with Argentina in particular. Now, the question, of course, in Argentina is who uses the energy. But before we look into this, I'd like to ask you, when have people started to use? There is some wind farms already. What's the history? I mean, we already mentioned the name of Enrico Spinadel, who was obviously one of the pioneers more than 30 years ago. But when did it start, and where is wind power at this point of time?
Well, we need to separate and split between people like Enrico Spinadel, which was an incredible engineer, professor, but a guy who thought the future from the very beginning, based on his knowledge, on his international experience. And he started with this dream of wind farms blowing and generating energy all around the country, even when people in Europe was doubting about this. We need to remind, it was not easy in the 80s or in the 90s to discuss about wind in countries like Argentina, unfortunately, with economic troubles every 10 years, more or less. So there has been an idea in Argentina was to follow certain regulatory programs like Europe, the German one, in some cases the American programs, but you have a lack of money. Like the situation in Germany with the feed-in tariff, the first one, 90 euros per megawatt hour, with the particularly of constructing the grid So the grid operator was obliged to construct the grid to your place. So it was nearly a dream for small energy producers to have 2 or 3 wind turbines. You get money from the bank. You say, hi guys, please bring my grid for next year here. The grid was there and you were producing renewable energy. But this needs a lot of support, knowledge, acceptance, and concrete money to make this kind of program liquid. And this happened in Argentina was very, and this to happen in Argentina was very difficult. The second thing is that before the first laws, there was some kind of cooperatives which started with 2 wind turbines, but really spread, really 2 or 3 small in the whole country. But the concrete history of the law and legislation started, let's say, with the first early pilots and a program which was called HENREN. And this took place between 2008 and 2012. This program was the first seed for large-scale projects. In the province of Chubut, 2 of them, Rawson 1 and 2, came online because of this program in 2011 and 2012. And this was the very first milestone. Then, again, these were initiatives which were with similar models in terms of rewarding renewable energy in a particular way, but were not possible to do like in Germany. Everyone has the option, and it's on demand, let's say. So these programs were open during some years and then closed, and then open and then closed, and then the industry was trying to use these kind of things, but not in a very open and peaceful way, let's say, for the business like happens in Germany. I know there are Germans criticizing some parts of their programs, but the transition from the feed-in tariffs until markets driven solutions, which you have in Germany, was done in a very smooth way from the outside point of view. Being in Germany, I know there are critics and there are comments, but in general, the industry was successful. Now with some moments which was slower or faster.
Yeah,
Then the
but I
second
think
program,
not only a German case.
yes,
You look at China, there's a long-term
yes,
support.
exactly.
And that's what you see today is a strong wind industry in those countries.
You see countries, let's talk about Spain or maybe
Spain.
the US, Denmark. Let's say the long-term stability for the business in general is the main medicine, keeping the economy stable with long-term perspectives and making the crystal clear the future. You know, it's not that you are jumping from one social problem to an economic problem and again to a social problem, which brings you to an economic problem, printing money, inflation. Those kind of things are not crystal clear. The long-term business is very complicated. Which is the difference? Short-term business. Let's say, let's construct a building, 2 years, we put this money there, and then we see. But the wind turbine, a wind farm is 20 years plus 3 or 4 years of development. You need to be sure that in your next 25 years, your business is reliable. And countries like you say, Germany, China, Denmark, Spain, US, wherever, this kind of long-term vision is there. I would say in South America, you can see Uruguay, Chile, Brazil are also examples of long-term perspectives and growth options. So I continue with history. After Henren, you see in Argentina, we saw another program which was called Renovar. This program was between 2016 and 2019. And basically was a program based on PPA's model supported by the World Bank as a backstop, giving you the guarantee of the PPA. But this program was stopped again because of economic troubles and then the government started, which from my point of view, it's a program aligned with the industry like is nowadays, which is the Matter program, which allows PPAs between privates, giving you dispatch priority rules, sustained in investments, and despite of macro headwinds and transmission constraints. Let's say other public policy programs are also there, like the REM, MDI, to promote renewable capacity in congestion points of the national grid, which is more, let's say, more technical stuff. But this is a little bit of the history. Let's say, summarizing is the organizations like the Argentine Wind Energy Association went with a lot of efforts through many years of helping politicians to understand we need some kind of support. With the years and the known history, let's say nowadays, this kind of public support is not needed anymore for wind, for PV. We are, again, the industry is developed, the heavy machines are there, very efficient, and they can compete nowadays. Even with oil and gas being subsidized, in some cases they are cheaper. And what they offer is the long-term reliability. That means if I buy for my own company, I am electricity intensive company, and I need 20 years of price reliability. Wind energy is a solution for me. PV is a solution for me. Because I am depending on oil and gas, which unfortunately is also depending on commercial wars, let's say standard wars we are now unfortunately living in the world. So this is also an advantage. Freezing the price, keeping my company in the long term sustainable, because as you know, shareholders, the first thing they check in your company is the energy supply when you are electric intensive consumer. And if you have a contract with a reliable partner for the whole energy consumption of the company for the next 25 years, then you are in an ideal place.
But where does Argentina then stand today? What's the installed capacity at the moment?
Well, in Argentina nowadays, you have many different technologies running, not only wind and PV. The key question here in Argentina is that you have let's say 5 or 6 actors of the sector, let's say, operating 1 gig of renewable energies in some cases, 2 gigs in some cases, but the figures show that you are in growing roughly 1 gig per year. The PV in Argentina is nearly 1.6 gigs of installed capacity. Just for you to have an idea, this was constructed in the last years. Let's say this is not a long story in terms of PV. You know Argentina very well in the north. There is the highest radiation possible. But you saw the first PV parks in the last decade. This is not a history like in Germany of the last 40 to 50 years, okay? Then you have companies, known companies, which in some cases are below 1 gig, and some of them following these companies. Like the leader in Argentina is a company called Gsänger. Then you have Pampa Energía, Central Puerto, AES, PCR, which are, let's say, nowadays leading the second road of investing in renewable energies, particularly in wind. Let me tell you, one important thing, Stefan, is the variety of generation technologies, which can be shown in the turbine suppliers. Vestas, Nordex, GE, Siemens Gamesa, Goldwind. this is also something very important because this shows us that depending on the wind area, let's say Argentina is class one winds in the Patagonia, and in the latitude of the Buenos Aires province is class two, more or less, for you to know. But all these suppliers are very professional companies, some of them with more than 30, 40, 50 years experience. And they are supplying class one and class two wind turbines with very, very successful operation and maintenance rates in the country as well.
What about as you speak about the manufacturers? Now, you mentioned there are some European, also Chinese manufacturers are there. I remember that some years ago there were also companies from Argentina who were into the business of wind turbines. Are they still around? Do they still exist?
No, let's say the company there was IMSA Wind, which was a wind turbine without gear. And then there was a company, NRG, from Patagonia. I think you met some of them while you were here in some of the conferences, and those times you were here in Buenos Aires. The two different stories. I don't have the last information from them, but the known information I have is that NRG is the name of this company, was a Patagonian company. They sold a couple of wind turbines, and then the market was quite critical because let me say something. Starting a wind turbine manufacture in the early 80s, or even before, during the 80s and the 90s, the market gave you the opportunity. But when you start from scratch, first of all, you have a supply chain issue. You start from scratch in Patagonia with your own model. You need to buy a lot of knowledge, but then the market, you are competing with a mature market supplier chain. So the prices and the track record of known wind turbine manufacturers, the German ones, Danish ones, American ones, Chinese ones, in competition with a new supplier, this is my own opinion, might be a problem for them, might have been a problem for them, making a mess in the supply chain when you need to start, and the liquidity. The other important thing is that the demand of wind turbines for those times, if you remember the three programs I mentioned you, was not a stable one. Were programs during 3-4 years, stop, crisis, problems, solving them again, 3-4 years program, again a crisis, again a national problem. And when you're a supplier, you have fixed costs. You need to keep paying and supporting your company, you know. IMSA Wind was a different situation. Was a national company, very well known. And they went to Brazil. They supply wind turbines in Argentina. The information I had is that the wind turbine was very, very reliable. But they went into the business in Brazil, and there was an industrial issue with financing, with competition between local companies and foreign companies, and they did not succeed. The details are, let's say, versions and newspaper information, which I prefer not to dive there because I might make a mistake. But let's say the two suppliers, is clear there were two large-scale developers from wind turbines, Energy from Patagonia and IMSA Wind, and they didn't succeed in the long term. Both made the milestones of reaching wind turbines running, but were not in the long run, are not working anymore.
So what we see, and I think this refers to what we spoke about before, there's not such a big market size. I believe it's a bit over, it's like 4.5 4.5 gigawatt now installed capacity. That's
Yes,
of
more
course
or less.
compared to China or Germany or US, not very big and not such a big stability in the market development. But now, what is the situation at this point of time? You have mentioned that you said that cost-wise, wind is competitive. How is at the moment the situation? Is there many new installations going on?
Let's say we have now, as you for sure know, we have issues in terms of economic and financial long-term problems in Argentina.
Mhm.
Inflation being controlled, but unfortunately everything under discussion, even nowadays. You have a private market under development, which is indeed the good news we have. Private companies selling energy and private companies buying energy. The government allowing them to construct grids when they need to connect to the national systems. And this is helping us to install, as I told you, last year 900 megawatts and this year 700 megawatts. And according to the values we have in the Alliance, we estimate next year 1.2 gigs of installed capacity. We have
Okay.
very large wind farms and very large PV parks under planning, and two of them already authorized in the north. So we have issues here in the country, but again, Argentina it's a country where when you let the private sector to work and you give them framework conditions which are reliable, step by step they do their business, and this is what is happening. Fortunately, uh, in the country nowadays, we have barriers, yes, transmission bottlenecks.
Mm.
The financial issue is a typical problem. We have capital controls. Very, very strong until this year. This year, some of them were removed, but not fully removed
Oh,
until now.
really? Even now?
And then the grid development is also an issue. So the capital controls, 80% are out, but again, the country is always going through economical crisis in terms of poverty, in terms of fiscal deficit, which has been reduced, but this has an impact in the population. So the perspectives are good in terms of development of the industry. I know there are many P2X projects being developed, and this means also new capacity from wind and PV. And the next milestone for the country would be to reach an agreement regarding fiscal deficit should be zero, regarding not printing money, controlling inflation. So giving the basics of any healthy economy framework.
Now, when you say it is worthwhile to invest, how is the business model working? Are companies buying the power from the wind farms, or how is it? I suppose, what I understand from you, there's no public support scheme anymore, but what is
No.
driving the market?
Let's say the prices of the conventional energy are nowadays more expensive than very well-developed wind and PV parks. So the business
Mhm.
nowadays is that a private company has typically one team developing wind farms. Let's speak about wind power, but it's the same in PV conceptually. And a second area of the company is addressing private companies for the signature of a PPA. As you know, a wind farm typically has a lifetime of 20 years, and the PPAs are not for 20 years in many cases. So the prices of the energy you are signing, in some cases, are, let's say, you can sign a PPA for 5 years, for 10, for 15, for 20. So you are the generator, you have a portfolio,
Mhm.
you are always trying to reach lands close to the grids in a very, very windy area. So your capacity factor is better as possible, and your levelized cost of electricity very cheap. And then on the other side, another team is addressing large scale energy consumers. Companies working in different areas which are not related to energy, which are looking for their shareholders to say, listen, I have the signature of the next 20 years. My electricity is going to cost, let's say, $55 per megawatt hour. And then the shareholders are saying, yes, fine. Where the problem this nation might have, my electricity is secure because the wind farm is there, connected to the grid, and the private agreement works because the provider is a reliable company which is active since the last 20, 25, 30 years. So I rely on our development. So this mix between private sector of energy offer, energy consumer, very reliable and long-term profitable for both, is driving now the development of wind.
Okay, that's very interesting.
Let me tell you also PV in Argentina.
It's very interesting. I mean, we had once we had a guest from Pakistan, by the way, where it's now also the main driver. So companies who are making contracts, it's not anymore the public support system. Very, very interesting. And then what's the market development that you see? Now, we've already mentioned that Argentina is, of course, compared to when we look at capacity like Germany, the population size is not so big. So there might be some limitations. There's not more need to use the electricity. I know that already Enrico Spinner, he had this vision of Argentina becoming an exporter of wind power in some ways or the other. How is the situation on that side?
Well, let's say the short-term future is that you have the private PPAs, the so-called matter program. This is what I told you. This is the key, let's say the hotspot. If you ask me now, the first thing in the short term is large companies buying cheap electricity, renewable electricity for longer periods than 5 years. This is the first thing. Then you have many companies and also areas which would be willing to buy very cheap electricity. And in some cases, as I told you, my country is very, very large. These structures are not known. I can give you an example. Water companies from each municipality are providing drinking water to, let's say, 1 million inhabitants. Let's put the example of my city, Mar del Plata. These companies are normally reliable companies, public money-driven companies, which are those ones responsible to provide the drinking water to the whole city. And it's a huge responsibility. They are buying a lot of electricity from the national market to supply their water pumps. So you can consume very easy 90 gigs hour a year. And the prices are prices related to conventional energy. Of course, emitting CO2, but let's speak only about the price, forget the environmental thing. When wind energy came to these companies and offer them 50, 55, 47, 43, depending on their offers, the impact might be that the public bill from the population is reduced regarding water supply 60, 70, 50%. So this might be, from my point of view, also a niche where you can go. You know? So from my point of view, it's very, very in the earliest stage of development, the PPA private supply from my country, because you have many, many companies willing to have this. But of course, you need money, you need grids, you need financial opportunities, you need credits. It's not that easy to say, well, give me 200 gigs installed capacity within 5 years. It's not, because the economy of the country doesn't allow this now. There is a repowering possibility in some places, because you have wind farms which were installed 5 to 10 years ago, And you know the development of the wind turbines has been very fast in the last 5 to 8 years. So there is a repowering alternative. There is a very important room, from my point of view, for local partnership with international partners. When we started, at least myself, 30 years ago, there were no local strong partners in Argentina, meaning an operator of 2, 3, 400 megawatts of wind PV with the knowledge and control room and monitor ancillary services and all these kind of things. Nowadays, you have at least 5 to 6 local operators with Argentinian investment and Argentinian money in Argentinian banks, making business in Argentina, moving millions and millions of dollars every year, which would be ideal for large-scale companies, which might be international and might be a good partner with local suppliers. This is an asset nowadays of Argentina. It's not only the potential, but now you have manpower, you have knowledge, financial structure, and local companies with proven track record, which in the international arena shows you as a potential partner.
Well, Alejandro, I think sounds really very exciting, very interesting. Of course, we all hope that Argentina can recover economically. I remember, I think my first trip when I started working for this international association, which didn't exist at that time, was more than 20, almost 25 years ago.
Yeah.
And since that time, I think Argentina had a hard time economically. I
Yes.
believe that that obviously is the key to the development, because when the companies need electricity and the people and they pay for it, then obviously the potential of wind, and you rightly said, together with other renewables, is more than enough so that one day maybe the country can also export.
Yes, the export question is, from my point of view, I am now working particularly there professionally. Argentina went through the very beginning, the paradigm of green hydrogen, exporting Patagonian wind using hydrogen. 30, 40, 50 years ago, every 5 years, we have received interested colleagues from, I don't know, Germany, South Korea, South Africa, Japan, and visiting typical places in our Patagonia. Maybe you have been part of them in some international conferences in Buenos Aires, many of them organized by ERICO. But the problem was the LCOH, the levelized cost of hydrogen. When we say, okay, you have a very brilliant capacity factor, but in that time, remember, electrolyzers were never ever industrialized. Wind turbines were not possible to be constructed here. So logistic costs, industrial costs, infrastructure costs were very high. Nowadays, we are not talking about, or not fully talking about, only green hydrogen. We are talking about exporting ammonia, or green methanol, what is so-called the P2X, or synthetic fuels, aiming to use the green hydrogen, to use the renewable energy to produce the green ammonia or the green methanol, to contribute to the fuels for shipping, for SAF, sustainable aviation fuel, large trucks, machinery, all these kind of things. Now, it's possible to think about exporting. And this is the third potential of a country like Argentina, I would say the region as well, where you say, yes, I do not have the population like Germany has, and I have a country, some German friends say time ago, nearly empty in comparison to Germany, because you have a very populated areas, but are the minority of them. You have in Patagonia 0.2 person per square kilometer, for example. So you have a top. When you say energy consumption, you said that with totally correct. Well, you don't have thousands of industries. You have a limited capacity, and then you need to export if you want to continue growing in the energy sector. And Argentina, in this case, has the opportunity to export its possibilities. One of them is being the option to export in the P2X area, which is a full topic for another day if you want. But basically, we might think about green ammonia and green methanol supplying Pacific coast, Atlantic coast, supplying Europe, supplying South Korea, Japan, supplying countries like Germany, which are willing to buy green products, and we are able to deliver nowadays in a price competitive volumes to these potential customers.
Well, Alejandro, that was very interesting. Thank you very much for sharing the insights firsthand from Argentina. I know that you've now kind of returned working also for the association. I wish you all the very best. I know you also have a look into other Latin American markets. I think that is very important as well. We wish you
Mhm.
all the best that Argentina can play its role that it has to play as a powerhouse of wind power and renewables worldwide. With
Yes.
this, all the best. And with this, I would like also to say thank you to our audience for listening.
Thank you, Stefan, for being always there since I don't know how many years now, 30, 35 in your case, I don't know, but
Well, it's a quarter of a century now.
okay. And really glad to be in touch with you and with the VEA colleagues. And fully agree with your words. There are places in the world where they basically are nearly obliged to do things and to deliver and to be reliable and stable. And the Argentine Alliance for the energy transition has the same commitment than its origins 29 years ago, willing to trigger this industry in a transparent way, and helping the private sector to deliver more than what they are doing now in a cheaper way, and expanding all sectors in the country. So thank you for this opportunity to reach you and all the VEA colleagues.
Thank you. And we look very much forward to working with you with the new organization now for the success of wind power in Argentina and the region, and of course, at the end of the day, for the benefit of the world.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you and
See you.
goodbye.
Bye bye.